Hello and welcome to Ode to Games. I'm Kevin Van joined alongside Logan Plant. How you doing, Logan?
I'm doing great. We got a lot of bummer news this week, though, Kevin.
Yeah, not a good run of news this week. Why don't we jump right into it? Probably the biggest news story of the past week is Google Stadia. It's shutting down. It's been out less than
Yikes.
3 years, and to be honest, the news didn't surprise me all that much, considering that I've heard next to nothing about Google Stadia within the last year or two. Like
I
there
feel like the
really hasn't
last
been
we heard
anything
about it
notable.
was when Cyberpunk was broken and Stadia was the only place that Cyberpunk actually worked
Oh
before they
yeah.
fixed it. That was the only time I'd ever heard of it in the last, basically since launch. That was it. And when they shut down their studios.
Oh yeah, there was that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be shutting down. It's already you already can't buy any more games on it. That's already done. For people who have bought games, the 10 people that are playing their games on Stadia, you will still be able to play your games until January 18th, and then it's all going kaput. But Google Stadia is refunding both game and hardware purchases, which is
Yeah.
wild to me,
Yeah.
especially the hardware, like the controller and such. Like the games, I feel like that's something that you kind of have to do because it's just going to be completely inaccessible. I guess they could have just not done it, but even the hardware too kind of caught me off guard that they were actually going to go in and just give people refunds for everything.
Yeah, is how many people out there bought like more than just one controller? I don't know. I guess I feel like I agree with you. I'm surprised they're refunding the hardware. I mean, it's great because
Yeah,
it's Google and they can absolutely afford to do that. And I'm sure not the very many people out there bought a Stadia controller because you could just use like your Xbox controller on Stadia. So I'm sure that's a very low number of people that they'll be
did it
refunding.
come
But
with the with like the packs that they had? I
came
believe
with
it
the
came with the starter
Founders
packs.
Edition,
Okay,
where
yeah,
yeah, I don't remember exactly what was all in that at the time. But yeah, there's the Founders Edition that came with like the
like a
exclusive blue
Chromecast or
controller.
something, and
Yeah. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I feel like we talked about this when this service was announced. We're like, it's not going to make it because Google just shuts stuff down when it's not instantly profitable. And here we are. And that's exactly what they did. And now people are passing around all these clips on the internet of, oh, we're very committed to Stadia. It's going to be around
yeah.
for a long time. Like, I remember there's this one interview that Jeff Keighley does, and he's just like, all right, sure. Yeah. And he's just like nodding his head, like, sure, you're going to support this. And you could tell he didn't believe it just from his facial expression. And it's like, here we are. Yeah, it's already done.
And that's the risk you run with hopping into these services, especially when it comes to cloud gaming, where it entirely relies on the service to be able to access the games. And
Yeah.
good on them for refunding all of these purchases, but they could have just not. Like I could see another timeline where they just don't and they
Yeah,
shut
me
it
too.
down and like, sorry guys, I mean, you hopped in and there you go. Sorry, all of your games are gone. Like that was always a huge concern when you're hopping
Mhm.
into this service and paying $60. This isn't even a subscription service where that's what it should have been, where you buy the subscription and then you have it until the subscription lapses. So
Yeah.
you didn't actually pay for any of the games outright. But when you do $60 for a service that could just shut down at any time and have the games rendered inaccessible is not a great proposition.
Yep. Yeah. And then, like, we talked about Cyberpunk, that's getting the big DLC, the Phantom Liberty expansion. It's like, well, sorry if you have all your Cyberpunk save data because it was broken everywhere else and you played it on Stadia. Now that's not where you'll be playing the DLC, right? So, yeah,
It
that's
sounds like some
pretty bummer
developers are
also.
trying to find workarounds to get save data onto other platforms, but I mean
Do
that's
you
not a
think CD
guarantee for
Projekt Red is
everything.
one of them? Because I don't.
I know
I haven't seen that.
Ubisoft was one of them.
Okay.
Um, Cyberpunk might have been.
Okay. All right. Well, that'd be great.
Destiny.
That's good. Who was playing Destiny on Stadia?
Cyberpunk,
Who?
as of now, no. It was,
Yeah.
but it's
Okay.
at the very least, Bungie and Ubisoft and the Hitman developers are looking at trying to get people's save data over to other
All
platforms.
right.
It gets a little bit confusing when it's like, okay, do you have it on other platforms? Are you going to need to buy it? Are they going to give it to you? Like,
Yeah.
it's
That's
just
weird.
kind of a whole mess. Now,
Yeah.
it was very nice that they were able to that they're going to refund everybody, but a little scummy side note here is that for developers making games for Stadia, they were unaware of the shutdown until it was posted. So
That's
some
so lame.
people were gearing up to launch their games on Stadia, and that is not going to happen because people can't buy any games on it anymore. Like that's just all gone, and they had no idea until the news broke the other day.
Yeah, that's the worst part about this, right? Like we laugh because Stadia was kind of a joke from the beginning, but there's people that this was their job or that were developing games for this that now we're going to lose out on that on whatever size audience was there. Or some people that were developing Stadia exclusives and like they shut down their own studios earlier in this whole process. It's like, yeah, that sucks. It's just kind of irresponsible to invest all this money into this project, hire all these people, get all these development partners, and then just pull the plug with no warning. Like, yeah, there's 3 months warning for consumers, but for people that this is part of their employment, there's none. Like, it's just done, and they just have to figure out put that game somewhere else or how to deal with that sunk cost that they put into creating this cloud version. Fortunately, like cloud versions are a bigger thing now, right? Like Xbox Game Pass, a ton of games have cloud, so maybe you spin it up over there instead or something like that. But yeah, it just sucks.
It just didn't seem like there was really much of a plan here. Like
Nope.
it came out, there were some games on it, they paid some money for some exclusives, and that was really, really it. Like
Yeah.
it didn't seem like there were any new features added or anything to try and pull people back in. The only strategy they seemed to have was let's get big titles on here that people could play elsewhere. And then their
Yeah.
idea of trying to get homegrown developers was half baked because they didn't even see that through. They shut that stuff down before it could even bear fruit. It seemed like they really had no long game here. This was launch it and hey, let's hope that it gains traction really quickly. If it doesn't, oh well, goodbye.
Mhm. Amazon Luna is next. That thing that you never
I
hear about anymore since it was
yeah,
announced.
had to pull
Yeah,
deep into the recesses of my brain to even
yeah,
remember
it
what
still
that is.
exists out there. It still
Yeah.
exists out there. Yeah.
So rest in peace, Stadia. Not the most surprising news, but kind of lame nonetheless that
Yeah.
thing is going.
Yeah.
Had some decent ideas, but man, the execution was absolutely atrocious. And I think the thing that you learn and take away from this is that if you're going to be doing a cloud-based service like this, subscription model is the way to go. Do not charge people for each individual title on there. Obviously, you need to do more as well than Stadia did, but I think right out of the gate, subscription works so much better for this than paying outright for a cloud version of a game.
Yeah. And they had some subscription service, but it was closer to like just games with gold than Game Pass, where it's like every month you get a couple of games, but it wasn't really the same as like our entire library is accessible through the subscription, so it was much more limited. And then Game Pass took off while Stadia was already basically dead,
Yeah.
so they never adopted something similar.
Yeah. So rest in peace, Stadia. So you know how we were talking? We've been talking about PlayStation and remaking games. Last of Us Part One came out, and
I can't
that
handle this one.
happened. Debatable if it really did a whole lot to update that, and that was $70.
Yeah.
Well, they're going back to that well again, this time with Horizon Zero Dawn, as well as a multiplayer spinoff. But let's start uh, with this remaster. It doesn't sound like it's going to be a remake, more of a remaster. This game came out in 2017, and it really seems to be just riding the coattails of the show. That
Yep.
was what The Last of Us Part 1 did because
Yep.
the HBO show is coming out and they're now working on a show for Horizon. And it's like, okay, we just have to pump another game out, despite the
Yeah.
fact that the game really doesn't need it. It's still quite new. It's still entirely playable on PS5. It doesn't seem like this is going to be a major overhaul to the game. And are they really going to charge $70 for this thing? If they
I don't know. I could see it being closer to the Ghost of Tsushima director's cut or the Death Stranding one, where that is a PS4 game, and if you have the PS4 version, it was like a $20 upgrade to get to the PS5 one. That's what Ghost was, but then it sold on its own in a retail copy for $70. And I think that it'll include like the Frozen Wilds, right? And I think
yeah.
that's what it'll be. I hope that's what it is. I hope it is like exactly what they did for Ghost of Tsushima, where like a year after the game came out, except it's so much later, so I could see them just going the full route. But I have to think that it's upgradable. But then again, you would think that Last of Us remasters would be upgradable to
Or at the
part
very
one, and it was
least,
not.
a budget title. Yeah,
Hmm.
even coming out for $40 for that.
Yeah.
$70 was ridiculous.
Yeah, and then the multiplayer spin-off. So like, yeah, there was a bunch of interviews with PlayStation head Herman Holst yesterday where he was talking about how they have like 12 live service games in the works, and a bunch of them are gonna use recognizable IP. We know about this rumored Horizon one now, and we know about the Last of Us
Last of Us, yeah.
standalone factions, and even like Ghost of Tsushima has its own multiplayer. But I'm just they're starting to lose me, Kev. They really are. Where these games are taking so long to come out that they have to plug the gaps with remakes of really 5-year-old games. Like, oh man, that just there's definitely other games that they could put these resources into polishing up to putting out, except for Horizon. But it's the hot thing because it has the sequel, it has the VR game, it has the show. So why not just crank out the original again? And then the multiplayer spinoff for Horizon, oh, man, it's just none of it is interesting to me. And it seems like they said they have like a ton of new IP in the works. God, when are we even going to see those? Because right now it's just like, all right, we already had the Horizon for this gen. Now it's just time to milk the franchise until Horizon 3 is ready in what, 6 years?
Forever.
Yeah, 7 years. Like, when the heck is this thing actually going to come out? And I'm not saying it should anytime soon. Horizon 2 was just this year. But the fact that there are 3 projects on the books, one of them's a remaster, one of them's probably a live service multiplayer, and the VR game looks cool, right? That's its
Yeah.
own original new thing on brand new hardware that's going to be really hard to find. Like,
And
it's just,
probably very expensive too.
yeah, this news is just like, gosh, PlayStation is just, it feels like the PS3 again. They're just making the wrong moves, and I feel like starting to lose some people. We've talked
Yeah,
about,
and
we
when
had what, 2 weeks ago, we talked about how they're really starting to lose us, and we're definitely not alone in that.
yeah, and you look back to the PS4 and when they would bring over games like The Last of Us, it would make a little bit more sense because it wasn't backwards compatible. Now you
Yep.
could say like it should have been backwards compatible. PS3 had its own issues there, but now we got the PS5 where the PS4 is backwards compatible, which makes these a little bit more egregious, especially when they've been charging what they've been charging for previous titles.
Yeah.
And and then it also makes the library feel a lot more bloated
Mhm.
because not only do you have the original version that you could play on the console, you also have a new version of the same game that you can play on the console, plus the sequels as well. And you have PlayStation exclusives kind of melding together recently. And I don't know, it kind of feels like the PS5 library just really melds into one thing, like one type of game and 2 or 3 versions of the same game. Do you want to play the PS4 version or you want to spend more money for the PS5 version? Like, it doesn't feel like it has its own identity. And I get that it's still a little bit early on, and it took the PS4 some time to build up that sense of identity. And once it got to the second half of its life, it was rolling. Maybe the
Yeah.
PS5 can get to that point. But where it is now, it just there's not a whole lot going on there. And there's really not much that you couldn't get on the PS4 still. There's still not
Yeah.
a whole lot there.
Yeah. And you could lobby some of these same criticisms at Nintendo for the ports of its Wii U games over to Switch, but I just feel like in that case, one, it's not backwards compatible. Two,
Yep. I mean,
13
PS4,
million
PS3. Yeah.
people had it instead of 113 million people that had the PS4. So it's like, it's not like these are new games to most people. Like, everyone knows what Horizon is and had the opportunity to play it. And The Last of Us, God, that game's been released 3 times now. And then also, like, the Last of Us was just a straight visual remake. Yeah, they tweaked the gameplay a little bit, but like, man, there's just no new content. And that's something about the best Wii U ports. That's like Bowser's Fury is just a brand new thing that made that game worth picking up. And there's some where they didn't do that, right? Like Tropical Freeze was basically a straight port that they charged more money for. But still, I look at this and I'm like, what is the point of playing Horizon Zero Dawn again on PS5? It's just to bring in new people. It feels like when the show comes out, like, oh, you can pay by Don't pay attention to this cheap $20 PS4 version. Pay attention to this
So it's
$70
so it's not
PS5
necessarily
version.
about bringing people in. It's about bringing people in at the right
Wringing
price
them
point.
dry. Yeah. It's lame.
Yeah,
It's really,
it
really lame.
does not make me excited in the slightest
Yep.
for booting up my PS5. And
What's on
it's
the
gonna
calendar, Kevin? God of War in November, and then Spider-Man sometime next year, and that's it. That's it from PlayStation Studios. Besides their VR games, that's all.
and I don't know about you. I'm not dropping $500+ on VR right out the
No,
gate.
me neither. No, no way.
So then
No.
there's a whole set of games that I'm just not going to be able to play.
I was on the fence about picking up a PSVR 2, and then they told me that my entire library of games didn't work, and I'm like, why would I pick up this one? Like, I'm just not gonna do that. Yeah, which sucks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one thing after another with PlayStation. Every week goes by, something else comes out where it's like, what are you
What are
what are you
you guys doing over
doing?
there? Yep. And then even Xbox to some extent, it's like, where are your first party games that you told me were coming?
Yeah. It's a little
Yeah.
bit easier with Xbox because they have Game Pass, so you can there's still kind of a reason to go back and play stuff on it.
Yeah.
Whereas with PlayStation, if there's no games coming out for it, exclusives, it just sits. It just sits on the floor.
Yep.
There's really not much of a reason to boot it up besides if it's your media player, which for me it is.
Yep. That's where I turn it on the most these days.
But that's not what
Yeah.
it should be. I paid $500
And I'm
for
playing
that thing.
Red
My
Dead, which
PS4
is
could
a
do that.
PS4 game. Yeah, I'm playing Red Dead 2, which is a PS4 game.
And you had a PS4 Pro, which
Yep.
probably could have ran it just fine.
Yeah, that game doesn't have a PS5 patch. Yeah. Which is disappointing because it would look awesome if it did. I wish
It's
Rockstar
Rockstar.
had done that.
They could have
Yeah.
done that.
Yeah. They just don't care about Red Dead anymore because it doesn't make the same amount of money as GTA.
Because the online version isn't as much of a cash cow
Yep.
as GTA is.
Yeah.
Yeah, PlayStation not doing a whole lot of good lately. Another weird bit of news. So CD Projekt Red,
Bro.
has- so we've talked about this in the past of their tendency to announce things way too early. Specifically with Cyberpunk, that thing was announced what 9 years before that thing came out, something like that, 2011.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now we have CD Projekt Red announcing multiple new titles for Cyberpunk and The Witcher.
Yeah.
So we have the next Cyberpunk, which is codenamed Orion. Then we have Polaris, which is the next installment in the Witcher games. And that's the beginning of a saga of games. So they have Polaris, and then they're talking about releasing 2 more games after that to create a Witcher trilogy. And they're planning to release this over a 6-year period, which is
insane.
I don't know.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I want to talk about that more when we go through the rest of the list.
So then we have another game that is going to be developed by an external studio that is headed with people who have experience on past Witcher games, which is a fully fledged Witcher game, but is separate to the 3 other Witcher games that they're making.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So then we have another game from a different developer that is set in the Witcher universe.
Yeah.
It also has multiplayer gameplay, also with single player as well. And then we have an entirely distinct new IP
from CD Projekt Red
from CD Projekt Red.
Yeah.
What are they doing? Why did they announce all of this at once?
It's nuts.
It would have been weird enough to announce the first one because we're still waiting on Cyberpunk DLC. We're still waiting on next gen of Witcher. And they have nothing to show for any of these. It already would have felt weird if like, hey, here's the code name for the next Witcher game. But they go out and say, here's the code name for the trilogy of Witcher games. Also this other Witcher game, this other Witcher game, and Cyberpunk stuff, and a new IP. That's insanity.
Yeah. And a little quote also at the top of this little list here is the company says it's also, quote, adding multiplayer to the majority of future projects. Yeah, okay. We'll see. So if you have this Witcher trilogy and they're going to make it in 6 years, doesn't that tell you they're probably going to use Unreal Engine 5, right? They're probably not going to use their own engine or whatever the heck they're using. And they're it's probably all going to be in the same world. Don't you think? Don't you think they're making one world that this entire trilogy is going to take place in?
If they're planning on releasing it over a 6-year span, probably.
Yeah. So I guess just set your expectations for that, that it's probably going to be the same towns and paths and everything in three games, which can be
Maybe
done
some
well,
like
right?
expanded sections or
Yeah.
something, like
Like that's what Yakuza did, and you love seeing how the
yeah.
Kamurocho changes over every game. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I actually think that's a very smart thing for developers to do to get games out a little bit faster. We'll see how it pans out with
That's
Zelda.
not guaranteed though. Like
No, it's not.
they might just
There's
not do that.
there's like no way to me that it wouldn't. I don't know. I don't know. I can't see a world where they make three distinct worlds in 6 years. I also don't see a world where they use the same world and these games come out in the 6 year span. There's just no way. There's no way.
Yeah, I just question why they needed to announce all of this because
Yeah.
we get nothing. Like
Yeah.
we don't know much of anything about these projects, and I know that people are always chomping at the bit to know exactly where everything is heading at all times. But really, what really don't get much of anything from this. We already knew that they were going to be working on another Witcher project. We knew that Cyberpunk wasn't ending with this. They want to keep on going with that. And we also kind of knew that they wanted to do a third IP because they've been,
Hmm.
gathering up some external studios to try and make everything kind of work a little bit better. We knew all of that. Why did why do we need to come out
I
and
don't know.
announce 8 games or whatever it is?
Because on the other hand, it's like people are always asking developers to be more transparent with what they're working on, but this just feels too far, especially from a studio that we know their last game shipped broken and dealt with years of crunch, and so it's like we don't have the utmost faith in this studio right now at the moment. So for them to come out and say, "Oh, we're going to fix our crunch," and then a year later say we're going to release 3 games in 6 years, it just doesn't really install confidence in them for me, and I'm sure for most people. So I think there's a right way to do it where you announce kind of your future plans maybe a little earlier than we see, which I don't even need. I just don't like when things leak, right? Like if
Yeah.
something doesn't leak and then they're like, "Hey, Metroid Dread's out in 4 months," I'm like, "Awesome! I didn't need to know about that beforehand." Um, but yeah, I don't know why they did this. I can't think of an explanation of why they did this except for like shareholders to tell them what they're working on. But like, the shareholders already knew they were working on The Witcher, and I guess for me that's enough because The Witcher 3 is a huge hit. So it's like they already knew that they were working on big things, but we'll see.
What do you think about series fatigue for The Witcher? Because we've got the current gen version of The Witcher 3 that's planned to come out this year. Then you have
Hmm.
this next trilogy of games that is going to be over a 6-year period. So, presumably one every 2 years.
Yeah.
Then you have a completely separate Witcher game. Then you have a game in the Witcher universe with single player and multiplayer on top of it. So, what is that? Including the current gen version of Witcher
Six games?
3, 3, 4, 5, 6 games plus the TV show is still out and about. And
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot.
especially for huge games like The Witcher, this isn't something where you just hop in and drop 20 hours and like, yeah, I'll be ready for whatever comes next. These are huge games.
Yeah. I wonder if this trilogy is going to be a little shorter because like yeah, like The Witcher 3 takes like 60 hours to beat. But if it was like Final Fantasy 7 remake, it takes like 30 hours to beat. I could play one of those every 2 years. I think. Like that's a especially because of the quality of that game is and of the quality we know like The Witcher is. We'll see based on what Cyberpunk was. But and then I think it really depends on what these spin-off games are
Right.
because yeah,
I mean, you have one where
they're a
it's
full-fledged game and a one with a campaign with quests and a story. But like, if it's not like a hack and slash RPG as a Witcher, if you're like, if it's something else, like what's the game? Gwent, is that the
the card game. Yeah.
yeah? Like something akin to that, where it's like something in this world, but is totally different. But then it says there's like campaigns and quests and stories and full fledged games. So I don't know what that really means, but I think it just depends how they approach it. Because like I've talked about this with Zelda before. Like a Zelda thing comes out every year, but it's always so different that I don't think there's Zelda fatigue. Like Cadence of Hyrule is nothing like Breath of the Wild. So it's like, yeah, you play both of those and you don't feel fatigued. But if it's 5 Witcher third person RPGs in 8 years, yeah, that's a little much. So yeah, I think it just depends what the spin-off games are like.
CD Projekt Red is going to be keeping Zach real busy
Yeah.
over the next however many years.
Yeah.
He's going to be going hard on all those
Yep.
games. And then let's do one last downer before we get into some of the weirder or maybe a little bit better news bits. Going back to PlayStation. So we've got PlayStation Stars, which has been rolling out in Japan. I think it's going to be rolling out soon in
Yeah. It's
other
rolling on other
territories as well.
Yeah.
And it seems like if you have a higher rank in the PlayStation Stars loyalty program, you receive better customer service.
That is super lame. So you get
Um,
like to skip the line, or how does this work, Kev?
Yeah, so apparently, if you are in this higher tier and you contact PlayStation customer support, you will be given priority in the chat order. So presumably, you just get pushed to the front of the line with the other people who have this tier, and it almost
Okay.
seems like it's pay to receive this because it's based on games and trophies that you've earned.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, that's weird. That just seems totally unnecessary. Like, I don't know. That just seems really unnecessary to me.
yeah, so
And almost backwards.
to get to this point, you're required to buy 4 games from the PlayStation Store and earn 128 rare trophies.
That's a lot.
Apparently. So
That's a lot.
a paywall and a grind to get access to better customer support. Now, hopefully you don't need to have customer support for certain things, but you might have to. And if you're not in this reward program, maybe it's going to be a bigger pain than it should be.
Yeah, that is super bizarre. And like the people that buy that many games and earn that many trophies are kind of like the whales that aren't going anywhere, right? Like they're with PlayStation, they're going to continue to buy games on PlayStation. But if someone who's on the fringes of PlayStation has like a bad customer support experience and waits for hours, like they might not come back. So that just seems like a weird decision to me.
Yeah,
Dude.
I don't see the reason why this should be tied.
Yeah.
Why the two things should be tied together at all. There's no reason. Like there should not be a hierarchy in customer support. It should just be try to solve your customers' problems. It shouldn't be the person who has put in the most amount of money and time should be the one that gets our support.
No, definitely not. Weird.
PlayStation.
Okay.
PlayStation, what are you doing?
Yeah, seriously.
What are you doing? All right, let's get into some nicer news stories here. We've got the Super Mario movie, Nintendo Direct. That's going to be out on what, Friday?
Thursday.
Is that Thursday?
Yeah,
Friday
Thursday.
for me. That's why I'm confused.
It will have happened by the time this shows up, so we shouldn't talk about it too long.
Yeah, as we do usually. But alongside it, we also got the first look at the poster for the movie. We've got Mario looking up. We've got a bunch of Toads in presumably Toad Town and Peach's Castle up on this massive hill and some floating islands as well. We also possibly got a leak of what Mario looks like from the front from a McDonald's ad. If that is real, he looks a little weird. Not Sonic movie original design weird, but just a little off.
Yeah, I don't like how he looks. I like everything else that this poster looks like, except even Mario from the back. I was like, I don't really like how he looks a lot. I don't know. But I liked everything else. I like the Toads. You got Probably, presumably, the main Toad, voiced by Keegan-Michael Key. Or I wonder if he's going to voice all the Toads. I could see that happening too, because
That
they
could be
all sound
funny.
the same.
Yeah.
But the main one looks like Captain Toad, right? Like he's got
He's
the
got his
backpack on.
backpack, yeah.
He's got a lantern. The only thing he's missing is the iconic headlamp. But he basically looks like Captain Toad, which is awesome. But I like the town looks. I like the castle sitting up on the hill. But Mario just looked weird to me from the back, even, and then seeing him from the front is like, oh god, why? Everything else looks just like the normal Mario world, and then that's the look you went with. We'll see though.
Something about his clothes. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like kind of the wrinkles and everything. I don't even know why that's weird to me, but it just,
yeah,
for whatever reason, everything else looks a lot crisper. And then his clothes kind of stick out.
Yeah.
For some reason.
I'm excited to see the trailer, though. I am. I think that I have not known what Nintendo thinks of this movie. Like, have they seen it and they're like, oh no, or are they happy with it? Maybe this was a deal already set in stone beforehand, but to me, them slapping the Nintendo Direct branding on this thing tells me that they have some sort of confidence in it. Because otherwise, they could just say, trailer's coming tomorrow. But no, they said, we're having a Nintendo Direct to reveal this trailer, which signals to Nintendo fans that's an event worth watching. I feel like if they were just like, hey, trailer's coming tomorrow, it wouldn't have been as big a deal as saying, hey, Nintendo Direct with the trailer reveal. So that tells me maybe Nintendo's happy with how this thing is turning out.
Yeah, because they could have just as easily done a shadow drop on Twitter, or they had it at a convention, and then they're like, oh, there it is at the convention, and then they just put the trailer up on their YouTube page.
Which is what I thought it was going to be last week. Yeah.
But no, we're getting a full direct. I like how they had to say no game information will be featured.
No.
So all you people, you can't complain if this is just the Mario movie, because that's all it is.
Yep.
There's nothing else here. So yeah, we'll be talking about that next week. Have full impressions. God, I'm excited to see this cast. That is what I'm most excited for. So we'll be talking all about that next week. A game that you like, Logan, is coming to PC. Sackboy, A Big Adventure, is coming to PC on October 27th. PlayStation doing one thing, okay, with some of their PC releases.
Yeah, this game is so great. This was in my top 5 games of the year for 2020 when this came out. PS5 launch game. Yeah, back when I was super excited about the PS5. I still like it. I don't hate it. But yeah, Sackboy, Big Adventure. Awesome game. If you don't have a PlayStation, you should definitely play it. And if you do have a PlayStation and haven't played it yet, like Kevin, this game is awesome. It is really, really good. It's basically on par with 3D World, which you just played and
I did
really
enjoy
liked.
that.
So yeah, super fun multiplayer platformer.
I got to get around to it at some point. And then last little bizarre bit of news. If you subscribe to a newsletter for Sonic Frontiers, you get some shoes.
Yes.
You get Sonic Adventure 2 shoes.
Nice.
For Sonic. Yep. Are you signed up already? Or
I'm not yet, but I'm going to. Dude, we are a month out from this game.
Oh, that is weird.
Yeah.
That is weird to think about.
We're a month away from knowing everything.
And you will be able to wear these shoes when you play Sonic Frontiers.
Yep. I had one more thing I just remembered while we were recording that I wanted to talk about this week.
Okay.
What was that game called that EA announced? Wild Hearts. Did you see the trailer for that game? It's their Monster Hunter competitor. There was this big trailer for it.
Like recently?
It's coming. Yeah, last week. It's coming from Koei Tecmo and EA.
Did they just drop this like randomly, or was this part of a show?
They were teasing it ahead of time a little bit, and then they just dropped it. But yeah, this is from Omega Force, which also works on they're the Dynasty Warriors studio. So they have a mixed track record recently, because Dynasty Warriors 9 was terrible apparently, but I really like all the Nintendo ones they've made. Strikers apparently was really good. But yeah, they're making a new Monster Hunter competitor, and they showed a trailer for it, and it's like 3-player co-op, and it also includes building mechanics. Like you build these like ancient traps instead of just like in Monster Hunter. It's very simple. You just set a shock trap or set a pitfall trap. But in this, it's like you build a tower and try to get the monster to ram into this tower, or you build a catapult and try to launch a stone onto the monster. And the monsters are much more, like yokai-ish, like they're very infused with nature. They look a lot more
Hmm.
supernatural than the beasts in Monster Hunter even do. But looks really cool, and it's coming to PS5 in February, which is like
That's
that's
pretty cool.
about
This
when
soon, 4 months.
yeah, it's about when Sunbreak's going to be wrapping up support, and then it'll be like a year wait until the next Monster Hunter. So like, yeah, Zach and I are going to pick this game up if it's good. We're going to hold out,
Make
see
sure that the reviews
how
are
it
good.
is,
Yeah.
but the trailer looks really really cool. So that's one that we're excited to play on PS5 next year.
Man, that
But
must not have gotten much traction. I didn't hear anything about that. Was that just in like Monster Hunter circles or
yeah,
something?
I don't
Like,
know.
this wasn't even a thing where like I missed the trailer, but I saw some people talking about it. I didn't see anybody talking about this. I saw more
Yeah.
about the Need for Speed leak.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. Yeah, but I didn't see many people talking about either outside of Monster Hunter circles. But there was like a interview with the director on IGN that I read, and yeah, the trailer reveal on Twitter. But it just looks cool. It looks really cool. I like the monster designs a lot. I think it looks like different enough for Monster Hunter to have its own flavor. Like you remember that free to play Dauntless game that was very
Yeah, I
much
do remember that.
I tried that a little bit. I'm like, this just is Monster Hunter, but feels worse. Like it doesn't feel good to play. And I think this game looks like it'll feel good to play. They have action experience with the Warrior series, even if some of the games aren't as good as others.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. You get hesitant when you say EA slapped onto anything, but the EA
Yeah.
originals can be good, right?
They
Those
can
can
be.
be good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited for this game.
Can also be It Takes Two.
Yeah.
But you could get a way out on your hands with this one.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Man, I feel like I should probably be hyping that thing up a little bit more. Like,
I know.
that did not even make a ripple or
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Hopefully it starts building up a little bit more as it gets closer to launch and they have more stuff that they want to show off. Do you want to get into our Ode To for this week?
Yes,
This
it's
is
very unrelated.
yeah, this is not tied to anything at all. Which is fine. We've done that in the past. It doesn't always have to be
Yep.
tied to this. We wanted to talk about motion controls this week. Just motion controls in general. Where you started with motion controls. I feel like a lot of people had that time period where they kind of fell off on it, and more so, where are you at right now? And I think most people started, of course, with the Wii. That was where a lot of people's introduction to it was. So Logan, when you got the Wii and kind of played that for the first time with motion controls, what was the thought on motion controls?
Dude, Wii Sports is still a great game. Like that, the original is still a good game. I liked motion controls a lot, and I think the Wii was really the first time I was maybe old enough to start to notice a difference between games Nintendo published and games they did not on their own platform, right? Because they were always very, I felt more nuanced with their use of the motion controls in their first party games compared to the waggle fests that were any third party game on that machine, right? Like the Rayman Raving Rabbids games started
Okay,
on
yeah.
Wii, and their motion was just like, oh, you need to sprint, right? Like, and then you just like go crazy with the Wii remote nunchuck and it hurts. Even Mario and Sonic, which
Yeah, they did
Sega
that too.
developed,
Yeah.
not Nintendo, I hate the motion controls in that game. But then meanwhile, in some of the Nintendo games, I think they're good. Like Wii Sports Resort, I also think is great. I actually like using the steering wheel in Mario Kart Wii, probably because I was a kid at the time when it came out, and that's just
Yeah.
how I played that game. But yeah, my family went all in. We had 4 of the Wii wheels, and that's just how we played together. And I thought that was fun. But then, yeah, there's just some games that use it terribly. One third party game that's great is Boom Blocks. I don't know if you ever played Boom Blocks on
Heard
Wii.
about Boom
That
Blocks, but
game,
I never played it myself.
it's an
It
EA
had like
original.
Steven Spielberg's name on it.
Yeah,
or something?
he was like executive producer of Boom Blocks. Yeah, he
So
worked on that
weird.
game, and it's a really good game. It's like puzzles basically, where you're throwing baseballs or bombs or different projectiles at a tower to like it's like kind of like Jenga. Like you want to knock certain points out without toppling the tower, or you do want to see who can topple the tower the fastest. Or there's like it'll be like a castle, and it's like you got to knock down the door, and it's like just super cool puzzles. There were 2 of those games. They're both great. Like I don't know. You have a question on here. It's like, when did you start to hate motion controls? I never really did, because I always found if it was used well, I enjoyed it. But and then I started to, as I got older, knew which kind of shovelware to avoid that used it poorly. Like we had the first Carnival games. I feel like everybody had the first
I don't think
Carnival
I.
games. Did you have that game? Did
I
you ever
want to say
play
a
it?
friend had it
Yeah, I was
possibly,
gonna say
but I
everybody
didn't.
at least knows somebody who had Carnival games.
You had at
That
least
game was not
secondhand
very good.
experience.
Yes. Yeah. But then at the same time, there's games where I'm like, you're shoehorning this into a franchise that is better without them, right? Like Super Mario Galaxy. That's how I feel about that game. Like it would be
Yeah.
better if I could just use a GameCube controller on that game, and
Well, there we go
reassign like the spin to like Z or something like that.
with the Switch version. You can spin with a button,
Oh yeah, uh huh, yeah.
which
So
is
yeah,
great.
I'm still, and then I still like motion controls today. Like on my list, I put down Splatoon. I think Splatoon is so much better with the motion control for aiming. Even Breath of the Wild, I really like aiming your arrow with the motion controls. I like it just for that fine tuning, precision aiming, with guns and bows and arrows and Nintendo games. And even Skyward Sword HD, I thought improved them a lot from the original. So yeah, I'm not out on motion controls. It's just it can ruin a game. Like it's really hit or miss for me. Is how I kind of feel about them.
Mario Odyssey kind of had some weird ones. Where
I
like,
liked it in Odyssey. I think it worked.
yeah, I feel like some of the moves were a little. I it was the one where you kind of like spun it around. Like you had to spin around and then spin the
Oh
hat
yeah,
around,
yeah,
which is a really good move
yeah,
because it has a wide range and can take out a lot of stuff. And I never felt like that was very natural to do. Like I
yeah.
played through that entire game and there was never a point where I felt like, I can pull this off 100%.
But
Like
what do you do for that one? Is that the one where you like bring them both in at the same time, or I don't remember how you do that one.
I don't remember. I just knew that there was some motion controls or something involved with it where you had to like spin it or something.
Yeah,
Um, there's definitely weird uses even now, for motion controls. Yeah, I started off, of course, with everyone with Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort. It was a great time. Like the motion controls in those games are still quite good and
mhm.
really responsive. I don't think I ever really had an issue with them. Like
No,
they always worked great. Um, I think my issue was the fact that the Wii's entire identity was based off of the motion controls, which felt like a lot of developers would just shoehorn it in because that is the selling point of the Wii. You have the motion controls, and that's why people go in and buy it.
yeah,
Whereas now you have the Switch and you have gyro, but it's not. It's just kind of an extra feature. So there's not the expectation that you're
yeah.
going to be using it for a certain purpose. Like there's certain games where it just doesn't work
I
right.
hate tackling with by flicking the Wii remote in Strikers Charged. I hate it. I hate doing that a lot. Yeah, when it could just be a button. Yeah, and Super Sluggers. I didn't like the
Super
motion controls in
Sluggers,
that
yeah, you
game
had
either.
to use the motion controls to pitch and to
Hmm.
hit. And I remember there were some times where you would like pull back to hit, and the game would just think that you swung, and it's like, oh, there you go,
Yeah,
and then you're like, okay, you
yeah,
gotta pull this back. So I think the state of it now, the Connect was it was the same way, where the entire
yeah.
identity of the thing is based on the motion controls and what the Connect does. There were some games where I had fun with it. Connect Adventures, to be honest, like I had a good time with that. It didn't last a long time. It didn't have a
That
lot
game
of
was fun. Yeah.
legs,
Hmm.
but for the couple of like parties and get-togethers that I had it at, it was fun. It was
Hmm.
fun to do those mini games with people. And Dance Central is still quite a solid game.
Yeah.
The problem comes when the entire thing is based on motion controls and then developers have to make bigger games within the framework and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, Connect was not great. Star Wars Connect was terrible. I had this Wipeout game I was telling you before the show that was like based on the show where they like the big red balls they go on the obstacle course, and that game was actually really good. I don't remember what it was called anymore, but yeah, the Wipeout game. The controls were super responsive, and you just used your Xbox avatar, and it was a fun game. Yeah, I liked that one. And then now some of the better one, like Beat Saber, is a great VR
Yeah,
motion control game. I feel like now a lot of motion controls exist
it
within
kind of
VR.
turns into VR, which
Yeah,
can do it a little bit better.
yeah, yeah. A couple other from the Wii that I wanted to shout out that are awesome is WarioWare Smooth Moves. That game's awesome. Did you ever play that one?
I did not
That one
want
has
to.
different poses, and it basically, as a micro game is starting, it will show you on the screen which pose you do, and it's like, oh, the handlebars, and then you grab the Wii remote like this, or the TV remote, and then you point it at the screen. And so like there's like 12 different styles. They call them like ancient arts or something like that, and it's presented in a really funny way, like these ancient like cave drawings of people using this tablet this way, and the tablet's the Wii remote. Or there's just a ton of different ones, and that game is just, yeah, WarioWare always uses the hardware so well, right? Like WarioWare Touched, or the what's the spinning one called? Twisted, WarioWare Twisted on Game Boy Advance, and Smooth Moves with the motion controls. Like such a good showcase for what the Wii remote could do. And then I like Link's crossbow training a lot. I thought that game was fun with the zapper. And then I like Nintendo Land and how it uses some of the motion controls. Like basically, Nintendo Land's Zelda minigame brought back the sword fighting like single player campaign from Wii Sports Resort, right? Like where
Oh
you're auto
yeah,
walking
yeah.
through levels, and then you have to fight people that you get to. Like that's what the Zelda level is in that game, and it's super cool. But then there's just as many misses as hits. So it like Mario Sports Mix. That game sucks. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
like the motion control Mario parties very much. I don't like the mini games that use motion controls.
Some of those weren't. Some of
Yeah,
those weren't great. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think with motion controls today, it's at a decent place with gyro. I think that gyro can work really well in certain games, and most games that use gyro give you the option to not use gyro if you want to,
yeah,
which I think is good. And I think that is something that needs to be in any game that features motion controls. You need to have, especially because these consoles are not built completely around motion controls. I feel like you kind of need to have both options because some people just aren't going to vibe with it. And
yeah,
you need to understand that there's going to be a decent amount of people that just do not want to deal with motion controls at all. Um,
yeah,
and if you have that where you have a not so intrusive feature like gyro in there with the feature to turn it off and have a different mode of control, I think that that's the best way to do it. Give people the option.
hmm,
But when you have a console like the Wii where the entire identity is based around it, I feel like they feel the need to shoehorn it in even when it's not necessarily
yeah,
needed.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, and
It's
then
like
you
they had
have
to go. They went all in for a generation, but now it's at a place where it's like, okay, you scaled it back, and I think you found the right balance for it.
yeah.
And then
Well, then
occasionally there's still the motion control focused game like Ring Fit Adventure, although that's very different. And
yeah, that
then
uses its own
Nintendo Switch
peripheral.
Sports is
Yeah.
just with the Joy-Con. And it's like sometimes there are these games that work, but well, I'm just happy that the games that I felt didn't need them ever don't have them anymore.
Right.
Like, yeah, like I can just control my sword in Zelda with a button again. I don't need to or need to swing that baby around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you really want that experience, there is a game for you.
Yep.
Just not the new ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think motion is in a better place than it was maybe at the end of the Wii's lifespan, where it's not super intrusive. It's used when it's needed, and generally you're given the option to turn it off. I think that's where motion controls need to be,
Yep.
because it's not the selling point that it was in 2006
No, it is
that
not.
that it was
Yeah.
back then. All right, want to wrap it up with what we've been playing? Not a whole lot for either of us, I don't think.
No, busy times.
All I've been up to is Bear and Breakfast. So a new update dropped today. The game still crashes, which
Ah,
is
man.
incredibly frustrating. I'm nearly done with it. I have a little bit left. There's a little bit left in the story and a couple other quests that I want to finish. And I'm planning to just go for 100% because I'm quite close on basically everything. Um, but yeah, I booted it up today and it gave me the prompt for the update. I'm like, oh, thank God, there it is. Because on the Twitter post that Bear and Breakfast had like a week ago, they were like, oh, we have this patch that we've submitted to Nintendo that hopefully solves the crashing issue. I'm like, okay, like sweet, like that that is my biggest issue. All the other UI stuff and all those other like weird things, like you can get around it relatively easily, but the crashes have been ridiculous. And I crashed within an hour. Like,
Oh man.
I still love Bear and Breakfast. I have never had a game crash as much as this one has. Like I have played it for probably around 20 to 25 hours. I want to say I'm closing in on 15 crashes.
Oh man, that's a lot.
Like it is constant. And I saw a post where they were like, oh, it crashes it's like a memory thing. The longer you play, the more chance there is that it's going to crash. But I don't even know if I believe that, because I don't think I played for more than an hour and I crashed. You shouldn't need to shut the game off and then turn it back on every hour to avoid the crashes. And there's just other weird things where it makes it really hard to recommend it in its current state. Another one that I don't think has been fixed yet. You can't really put the game into sleep mode. If you put it into sleep mode and come back to it, the sound doesn't work anymore.
Okay.
So you have to shut the game off and go back into it again. Like there's just these weird things that just make playing the game more annoying than it has to be. Like when is it frustrating when I've like built out an entire top floor and then I go and start to do something else and the game crashes and I realize that it auto saved right before I did all of that stuff. Like, I got to do all that again. It sucks because when you're actually playing the game, it's super fun. And even after all the crashes, I hop back in and I keep playing. But for someone who is not as into the gameplay loop as I am, please hold off until there are some patches to at least fix the crashes and, like the putting it into rest mode issues. Because that stuff I think would turn away most players that aren't me if you're getting crashes nearly every hour.
Yeah, that's too much. I wouldn't be able to hold on.
So hopefully they can get some patches out within the next month and at the very least fix those, like just bare minimum issues. And then that can all be good. People can go in and play, and then they can work on some of the other features that they want to add, because it's frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's it. What have you been up to?
Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, and I am not going to finish it. I've abandoned this game after
How far
my
did you
last
get?
play session. Halfway through the second mansion, I think.
How many mansions are there?
5 mansions.
5? Oh, okay.
It's just not worth it. It's just not worth the time, honestly. I love Luigi's Mansion 3, right? That is like, it got second on my Game of the Year list in 2019.
It's a great
that
game.
is still amazing. And then I played the original, the 3DS remake. It's a great game. I really like how small and self-contained it is. You just explore this one mansion, and then I really like a lot of the boss design, and having to figure out some of the ways you beat them is super interesting. Luigi's Mansion 2 just has none of the qualities from the first or the third that I like, because the third is cool because it's like, man, what am I going to see next, right? And it's just a gorgeous game too. And it's like, oh, now you're on the Hollywood Hotel level. Now you're on the overgrown level. Now you're in a pirate ship. Now it's a pyramid. Like, they just went crazy with it. And 1 is cool because it just really leaves you to figure everything out on your own. 2 takes place in pretty bland mansions, and EGAD calls you every 2 minutes. It's just that Nintendo era where they would, like Mario and Luigi Dream Team, right, had the same problem. A couple other games in this era, the early 3DS and the Wii U era, Nintendo was just holding your hand in every game they released, and this one suffers from it. And I never really knew that before. But yeah, EGAD will be like, oh, you found that key? Okay, come on back to my lab and we'll look at the key. And then you get sent back into the mansion and you have to go through the same rooms you've been through before. And it just doesn't feel organic. It just feels like a checklist almost, and just like, gosh, and then you get pulled out of the mansion, thrown back in. Yeah, it's not good. It is not a good game to me.
Glad I picked that up as part of my 3DS spree. It's nice to have, to have all 3.
Yeah,
but that is disappointing. That's the same sentiment that I've heard from other people too, is that especially when you put it next to Luigi's Mansion 1 and 3, it just feels very out of place with the style of game that it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I really, really dislike it. The more I play on, I'm like, wow, this is not good. Every mission I do, I'm like, maybe this will get better, and then it does not. It does not.
And it's fine to abandon
Yep,
games. You
I'm
give it
done.
some time. If it's not clicking and if it's not getting any better, uh, yeah, please drop it and play something that is more worth your time that you'll have more fun playing.
Yep, yep. So I didn't. I was gone all weekend from like Thursday through Monday, so I didn't have my Switch with me. So that's
Big
why I
things were
just I
happening in
brought
the
my 3DS.
non-gaming world, so
Thing,
we've
thing,
been
very,
busy.
very big things. So I'm gonna get back into some Xenoblade this
Yeah.
week and some
All right.
Splatoon stuff. Back to the
Back,
basics.
yeah.
Back to what I've been doing.
I mean, I
Yeah,
think that's what this section is going to be for the near future. I'm going to finish
rest of the
Baron
year.
Breakfast here soon, and then I'll be back to Xenoblade, and it's just going to
Yeah,
be, oh, where are you at? I'm at this point. Oh, cool. I'll be getting there
Xenoblade
soon.
crashed. It
Oh, did
crashed
it?
once on me. Just
Really?
once. Yep. Yeah, and for really seemingly no reason. I was just walking around. I had just beaten one of the not the elite bosses that leaves a grave, but the blue numbered ones
So
that are
kind of
like
like the rare
I think
difficult ones or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
I just beat one of those. It gave me my XP bonus. I picked everything up. I was just walking up this hill, and then it was just like it just froze for 3 seconds, and I'm like, "Is this just stuttering?" And then it was like, "We have to close the software." I'm like, "Okay, okay."
I'll
Luckily,
take your word for it.
I had just auto saved right like 2 minutes before that, so I just refought that thing, and I was back where I was, and
Well, that's
I
good.
haven't had that since, and that was like 6 hours ago. So, but only the one time.
Not as
Yeah,
consistent as
no,
Baron Breakfast is.
no,
No,
yeah,
within every hour. Yeah, when I'm playing, because the game kind of stutters a little bit when it's doing
uh-huh.
the autosave, but it also kind of does that because it'll freeze before it crashes. So with most of the autosaves, I'm like, oh, we're good. Okay, okay. It was just an autosave.
That's funny.
I didn't crash. And then it's also like, oh, thank God it autosaved because if it'll crash in like another minute, like, oh, there we go,
Yeah,
back to the autosave.
yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, God, they got to get patches out for that. All right. Any final thoughts? We're at the end of the episode.
Go
Any final
Mariners,
thoughts? You go M's.
go M's.
Entirely non-game related.
Not
But
true. Nintendo used to own them, and you could bring your DS to the ballpark and order food and watch like the pitch tracker on your DSi.
did you ever do that?
I did. Yeah, I
Okay.
did do that. You could check out DSs too, and briefly for 3DSs, but it was shortly after the 3DS came out that they abandoned that
Because it's
software.
like, oh, wait a minute. People got phones now.
Yeah,
So
uh-huh. Yeah.
yeah. I can't remember
It
if I
was
did
cool
that or
though.
not.
It was cool.
I might have.
And they still
But
have that Nintendo ad behind the plate, including the most recent render of Mario holding a baseball bat. And I'm like, okay, I know it's just because this is a baseball game, but please let this mean something. Please, like next year,
where's the
announce
new
Mario
game?
baseball. And I'm like, that's why they made that render. I know that's not the case.
Of course. Yeah, God, I want a new Mario baseball game.
Me
It'd
too.
be so good. That'd be what a big brain play if that was kind of like the little
The
bit
first
before they
tease.
announced it. Like, oh, did you notice that at Mariners home games we had this render, and
I
now we're
noticed.
making a new game.
I
The one
noticed.
fan.
Yep.
All right, that's going to do it for us on this week's episode of Ode to Games. Check back in next week. Should be a fun one talking about the Mario
Mario.
movie, getting to hear that whole cast. Oh, man, that's going to be fun. We'll be talking about that next week. We're here on Thursdays or Fridays, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, other podcast streaming services that you may use. On YouTube, at Ode to Games has the video version of the podcast, so you can check that out there. We're on Twitter, at Ode to Games. You can send an email to odegamescast@gmail.com. For Logan, I'm Kevin. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week.